You suffer from lifestyle deficit disorder? The purpose of the Perfect Day podcast is to share simple steps and strategies as a powerful antidote to lifestyle deficit disorder. Listen in as I reveal a path away from disillusionment and dissatisfaction to a life of purpose, joy, and freedom, making every day a perfect day. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. We are live from Dig South with the Perfect Day podcast. Perfect days. In a world filled with fear, scarcity, and perfectionism, perfect days are far from perfect. However, I'm here to tell you they're yours for the taking. I'm Cokie, your Perfect Day engineer, and I am thrilled to tell you that right out of the gate this morning here, day one, Dig South, we have Rhett Outten of Croghan's Jewel Box. Rhett, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Rhett is a Perfect Day veteran, and I don't always have the opportunity to have those who have gone through the Perfect Day process on the show, so I'm really, really happy to have you here to share of the amazing experiences, struggles, successes, maybe strategies that you at Croghan's have with such an amazing story to tell. You have a big story to tell, and you may have a different version of your story to tell, but what resonates with me the most, and what I'm thinking listeners may want to hear about, is just this idea of legacy and how Croghan's has been a part of Charleston's culture for, I think the number is 111. I think it's 111 years. Is that right?
It's crazy. We don't really know. In true Croghan's form, we really don't have a lot of paper history. But we found an ad in the News and Courier back to 2007, so we kind of picked that as our date.
Wow. Okay.
So that's what we're going with.
Well, 111 years is something to be super proud of, and what's hard, business in general is hard, being an entrepreneur and a business owner, but I think there's a certain different set of awesomeness and maybe struggles of doing it with family. And your family has obviously weathered many storms. I love that storms and wars and depressions and recessions and
111 years has held all of that,
right?
For sure.
And so there's such a strength and a foundation there that really should be applauded. And this would not be a Perfect Day podcast in true form if we didn't begin in gratitude. So again, thank you for being here. But what I love about Croghan's is that very recently, I received a communique from Croghan's where you and your team absolutely put it out there to the world from a place of gratitude. And it was in the form of a letter that I received, and it was, don't take this in any way offensive, it was quite a long letter.
We didn't think anyone was going to read it.
That's right. And so what's interesting is I once, this is a sidebar, I once won an award, and I didn't realize that I was going to have to get up and accept, and I didn't think I would win it. And the people who were in the running for it got this long email, and at the very last sentence it said, be prepared to give a 5-minute speech, every single one of you. Well,
you didn't read it.
I didn't read it.
You didn't read it.
I read nothing.
Just like I didn't read we were going to be filmed.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to have on our little headsets somewhere.
Aren't you glad you didn't read that?
I'm really glad.
But here's the point. I read every word of that letter.
Thank you.
I read every word of that letter. And I think it speaks to several things. It speaks to why I love that you're here, because you're a storyteller. And I think that's was loud and clear in your Perfect Day process, that you're a storyteller and that you have a major story to tell. And you just do it so eloquently and so well. That letter was a beautiful testimony of gratitude for all your many customers and referrals and all the business you have across the country. So will you take me back to where were you sitting? What were you doing when, I'm assuming that the genesis of the letter came from you or someone at the staff. Tell me where and how that all evolved.
I was home sick with the flu, and my sister who we work together every day, called me and she said, we're always trying to think of how to say thank you. I mean, we are so grateful because, as it says in the letter, people can buy jewelry anywhere. I mean, it is so quick and easy. And there's really no reason why a tiny little store in a 1700s building on King Street where there is no parking and where it's not always an easy place to shop. And we are overwhelmed how people seem to love to be there. And it is rare that a customer walks out of the store with a purchase where we don't go, was that so nice of him to come buy that here? We really feel that, and it's true. It's not just something made up to. And so Mariana called and she said, we've done lots of different things. We've taken our top 20 customers and sent them for a night at the Dewberry. We did a partnership with them and dinner, and we've done a lot of things to say thank you over the years. We send gift certificates, and we try to send a note after each sale, but that doesn't always happen. But she said, I just think we should write a letter. I was like, man, I don't know that anybody's going to read a letter. She said, well, let's just try it. People love to get mail. Nobody gets mail anymore. I mean, how nice would it be to get a letter, not an email, not anything,
Absolutely.
Just something in your mail slot.
I did go to access it via email, and I'm like, I don't think it's
not even
via
there.
email. And you know what? That's why I read it, because it wasn't a damn email. I mean, could we just ban email and go back to the mailbox? Wouldn't that be nice?
So I was at home with the flu, which ended up being 7 days at home with the flu. But I thought, well, I can do that. And I pulled out my little phone and notes and started tapping away, and it just came out. And I sent the proof, and I thought I was sending just the proof to my sister. But we have this whole family, which is like 14 people, text message, and I sent it to all 14 of them. And then I went, oh my God, I didn't mean to do that. Well, all the responses were, I'm crying. Wait, really? Wait, who was getting, all of this from my family? And so
what a beautiful mistake.
It was a nice mistake.
That is awesome.
I thought, well, nobody's going to read the letter. And I kept trying to edit it. And then finally Mariana was like, no, we're not going to edit it. We're going to send it just like you wrote it. And whoever wants to read it. But the amazing thing about the letter, I didn't know you got thank you letters for thank you letters.
Yeah, right.
We have gotten so many. If I had known we were going to talk about this, I would have brought some of them. The most beautifully written letters back to us that just make you feel, jewelry is one of the few things, the things that we sell in our store. It is a thing, but it's rarely about the stuff. It's about what it represents, and it usually represents something meaningful. It's a 16th birthday or an engagement ring, or, we have the privilege to work on so many people's grandmother's engagement ring. And think if you have had that my grandfather probably made it. So 100 years later,
right,
for somebody to walk in and say, your grandfather made this ring for my ancestor, and we want to preserve it. I mean, that's really an honor.
It absolutely is. And you know what? I really wouldn't classify myself as a jewelry girl.
You look pretty good, Cokie.
Despite the fact that I'm wearing this Dudley Van Dyke that's carried exclusively.
And some beautiful rings.
That's carried exclusively at Croghan's. And yes, of course, these are yours too. But really not traditionally being a big jewelry gal. I will say, along the lines of what you said about the special nature of the special occasions, and this thread that you're weaving throughout Croghan's, this one of legacy, for me, a dear friend, and probably you emphasized it to me as well, brought up this notion of, my children will have this
absolutely
one day. And so that meaning of what these were when it was given to me becomes something completely different to the next generation.
Yes.
And so I love that jewelry can be an expression of not necessarily what's really part of every woman's perfect day. Let's just be real.
Let's be real.
A day at Croghan's, you walk out with the little box. It's a perfect day. But truly, just the idea that it's not necessarily just about the materialism piece of it. It's really, about how you can continue on in the hands or the ears or the necks or the arms of your children.
And think about the things that you leave behind. It's important to plan financially because that's a huge piece of not leaving your family in a struggle or without means to carry on. Past that, there are very few things that you can leave to your children. I mean, it's not cars. It's not furniture. It's certainly not going to be furniture in this day and age because it's not built that way. Nobody wants brown furniture.
Yeah.
Nobody wants portraits.
Right.
Nobody there's really very few things that you can tuck away and know that it's a little piece of the person that you love.
Right. It's a little something that usually packs a really big punch.
It really does. Because it's special.
Not only in value, but also in feeling and emotion.
It is.
And, I don't know that we have time to go down this rabbit hole today, but, you bring up a really good point, which is really, really is what rooted me in this perfect day process. I wrote my first perfect day in 2003, and it was in that workshop that I realized I really need to bring this into my financial practice. Like, this is something that brings this connectedness of values to clients' money, to their money. And what you just talked about with what do you leave behind? Well, my clients who leave money behind to, their children or grandchildren, I don't know if you know the statistics about this, but that money, the cash,
it causes pain.
It absolutely causes grief and pain. And I don't know if you're familiar with the fact that the statistics are that only 3% of that wealth gets transferred past the third generation.
I did not know that.
So first and foremost, the Ramsey family, thanks to your grandfather, thanks to your mother and all the players, your sister and all the players, your brothers, just the foundation that's put in there, you were a rare specimen because you've already seen that wealth transfer past that third generation. You have third and fourth generations working at Croghan's. Fourth generations working at Croghan's. And I don't know if you've ever heard the story of the Vanderbilts versus the Rockefellers, but that story is that the Rockefellers transferred the values with the money. Right. Okay, so I almost see this as an expression of jewelry. And especially with respect to your story. If there's no value transfer, the money just goes away.
Exactly.
It disappears.
Exactly.
Doesn't make it to the third generation. So what Croghan's is doing with this value transfer, you're absolutely in the store, physically making and marketing and doing as your grandfather did, and that's the value transfer.
Well, the value too is when you really think about what is sold in a jewelry store, it seems like the fluff. But very often it is the one thing. I mean, think about christening cups and bar mitzvahs and ordinations and weddings. I mean, there are a lot of sacred things that we're invited to participate in. And very often
milestones in time, right?
Milestones.
Perfect days.
My grandfather was a hand engraver. And a beautiful hand engraver. And that is really almost a lost art at this point. But so he, for 111 years, we've been engraving the date. And so how often, do you know when you were baptized? I mean, if you have your christening cup or your sterling frame or your little feeding spoon.
And don't we go back to that for our children too? Like, when was that? What day was that?
What was that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we are almost like little history keepers.
It's fabulous because for me, I mean, I hate to keep spinning it, but it's a history taking and a documentation of perfect days.
It is.
So with that, we're going to go to break. When we come back, I'm not sure what we're going to talk about, but I think we're going to talk about, I'd like to hear about your travel back to Charleston in 2009 when you re-entered the business.
Sure.
We're here with Rhett Outten with Croghan's Jewel Box, making it a perfect day. Hi, I'm Cokie Barini with Perfect Day and Perfect Day Connect. The Perfect Day Workshop experience, which we deliver annually, hopefully in a city near you, is a great time and experience to take time out of your busy schedules to work on your business as opposed to working in your business. We just finished an amazing workshop here today in Charleston, South Carolina, and what happened was exactly what I thought would happen. When we went through the perfect day process, it became abundantly clear that every single person in the room, the commonality amongst everyone was that they really wanted to work more on what I call their contribution bucket. And having delivered this perfect day process to my clients over the last 10 years, that's 100% true of every single person I've worked with as well. So it's not surprising to me that with a group here within a workshop experience that it was true for them as well. So if you find yourself saying, I'm too busy to give back, or I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough money, then I really think that the perfect day process could benefit you. It's this idea of marrying our money and our finances to that of our values and what's really, really important to us, so that we can find this life of joy and happiness. That's what really cultivates this spirit of contribution and wanting to give back. So thank you for joining us and for listening to this message. My goal is to impact entrepreneurs and individuals alike who just feel that they have a never-ending to-do list and or have very little time to give back, which ultimately gives them joy and happiness in life. So with that, until we meet again, have a perfect day. Perfect Day Podcast here live at Dig South 2018. I am glad to introduce and thank Rhett Outten with Croghan's Jewel Box for being here today. At break, we just went to break and we were talking about a really dynamic and interesting story of your re-entry back into Charleston. I think it goes back to 2009. Do I have the date right?
Yes, you do.
Okay, 2009 of when you came back and stepped back into Croghan's, right?
Right.
And what I loved about the story as we continue on with this value discussion and how I really know that every perfect day is rooted in your core values. And there's a big part of your story of moving back in 2009, and it has to do with your core values and your daughters being your first priority. That's near and dear to me because, we both have how far apart are your daughters in age?
4 years.
4 years. See, mine are 2.
3 grades, 4 years.
But I get it. And so I love that you said your daughters were your first priority. So take us back to 2009. What was happening? What brought you back to Charleston? How was the re-entry? I have so many questions, so I'll just let you go.
Well, I lived in Greenville for 22 years. I had a store in Greenville for 10 of those, which was more fun than you can imagine, to start a second little branch of Croghan's in Greenville. And I would say those years...
Jewelry was in the blood, clearly.
I never dreamed that I would do anything else but sell jewelry.
Yeah.
It's always
That's
been
true entrepreneurism right there.
It's always been my... I majored in business and marketing at Carolina and I took every small business class they offered and had written a business plan, all of that. But so I had this wonderful little jewel of a store up there that I loved. Loved Greenville. My family loved Greenville. My mother called me every day of my marriage to wonder when I was moving back to Charleston.
I bet she was.
Every day.
I bet.
But I really loved Greenville.
It's a lot of phone bills for back then.
Truly.
22 years
Truly.
of it? Wow.
And I really don't regret one moment I spent there because I have wonderful friends, and really we have an amazing list of customers from Greenville. But I would say it gave me my wings. It was a place that I kind of grew into who I was meant to be.
Right.
Not without... when you grow up somewhere, sometimes that's a difficult thing to do.
That resonates with me. I believe all Charlestonians should venture out, but we all come home.
Well, it calls hard and loud.
Yes.
Loudly.
Yeah.
But anyway.
It took you longer than me.
It took
but
me
we're
longer.
back.
Right. Well, so I moved back and I went through a separation and I call him my husband, not my husband, my ex, but my husband. And he said, I think you should move to Charleston. Your mom's old, and I know that is something that has always been in your heart, and you can get the girls signed up for school. I think you should do it. And the next day, the truck was packed, and I was home.
Awesome.
And anyway, there are lots of really kind of endearing, if not hilarious, stories around that. But obviously, my first priority was my girls. I'd uprooted them in everything they knew.
And they were 10 and 14,
10
I
and
think
14,
you said.
6th and 9th grade.
Hard ages.
So anyway, I was scared to tell my mom because she's, Catholic to the root of her being. And I finally got the courage to tell my mom. I didn't know if she was going to send me to the bishop or to go back home and, stay married or what. But she threw her arms up and she said, well, it's about damn. The reason I know it's 22 years so well is because she threw her arms up and she said, it's 22 years I've waited for this moment.
That's awesome. So what you thought her reaction was going to be was
I didn't
not
know.
at
I was
all.
just going to go with it. I was just going to let her, I was just going to answer questions. I was not going to give any information.
Yeah.
But so that was a wonderful moment. And then the next day she died.
Wow.
And so it was very...
What a timely homecoming.
You just cannot imagine. You cannot imagine.
Yeah. And to look at a good lining, a perfect day lining of something, a horrible event, the fact that you were here is so beautiful.
Know why I didn't know at 87 that was an imminent thing, and why I thought I had all this time. I had these visions of us curling up on her bed and her telling us stories, and catching my children up with all that we'd visited a lot. It's not as though we were stuck in Greenville in a little cave, but and so that really it was a really horrific time. Time.
And I wonder what host of other issues happened. If we can talk about struggles, because I think listeners love to hear about struggles.
I don't love talking about struggles.
Okay. Well, we don't have.
I'll just
we don't
tell
have
you.
to. But
No,
there
it's
must
fine.
have been struggles on top of your mom's new passing. You re-entering a family business, and just re-entering Charleston, and a separation, and children in new schools. I mean,
all-girls school with a uniform.
Oh, Lord.
It was horrible.
Yes.
I mean, it was fabulous. It was the best thing that ever happened to them. But at the same time, it was a really difficult time.
And so if you were to speak to, and let's just say it, another woman entrepreneur in similar circumstances, what would you say? What would you say to her? What would you say to him? Because you know what, the guys are in the same situation too. Obviously, there's gender differences, and it does make a difference. But what would you say to them?
Well,
how did you keep your head about you?
I didn't really keep my head about me. I was a big hot mess, honestly.
And so that was okay.
But when I pulled in my driveway, two of my dearest friends for life were sitting on the front porch of my new house. And one of them said, we're going to walk the bridge every morning. And I said, we are. And I would drop my children off at school and meet her to walk the bridge. And, when I do have a deep faith, and I do know that I kept thinking, if I can just get to that walk on the bridge and I can see the water come in and the water go out and the sun come up and the sun go down, it's okay. If we can just make it through one more process of that.
The certainty in all those make the uncertainties okay?
Yes.
Okay.
But those
Beautiful.
were the two things I could count on, right? I mean, honestly, the sunrise and the tide. And I missed the water so much. I didn't really realize it. I loved the mountains. I thought Greenville was beautiful. We had fall and leaves and snow and fires, but I didn't realize how much I really missed being able to see the horizon on the water.
I love that.
And there's a lot that just being still and quiet and letting that kind of seep in, that life goes on, that what washes away comes right back.
Right.
And as far as, where I didn't really realize it until a couple of years later, but, my daughters really got the best of my mom, even though she died so not suddenly, she was old, but they got the best in the fact that everywhere we went, someone came up and told them a story about Mom. And so, and I'll tell you my favorite. We were sitting getting our toes done, and we're all lined up in those big chairs, right? And this lady walks over and she says, Rhett, I hadn't seen you in so long. And I had no idea who she was. I have to say, I didn't know who she was. And I'm kind of antsy a little bit, and my girls are both sitting there, with their feet in the cool. And she says, I have got to tell you my favorite story about your mother. I said, okay. And she said, well, I was in nursing school, and my husband was in medical school. And the nurses used to always go to Croghan's and, pick out our favorite piece and play on, during our lunch hour. And she said, but I became very fond of this necklace. And I called it my necklace. And when we would go in Croghan's, I would say, can I try on my necklace? And she said, and this lady was definitely late 70s. And she said, and one day I'm standing there looking at my necklace, and your mother gets up out of her chair in the back of the store, and she walks up, and she says, now you've been looking at that necklace for a while, haven't you? She said, I almost died. She said, she said, well, yes, ma'am. And she said, well, what's stopping you from getting the necklace? She said, oh, well, we're in medical school, and I'm getting ready. We want to buy a house. We want to have a baby. She said, well, your mother just looked at me, and she said, if you wait for all of that to happen, you are never going to see that diamond necklace. She said, let me tell you what to do. You put it on. You go meet your husband at the door with nothing on but that necklace. My little girls are sitting in the water spewed. They were like, so get naked. Meet him at the door, nothing but that necklace. And either bring me a check or bring me the necklace back tomorrow, and we'll never talk about it again. And this lady pulls open her shirt and she says, he loves it when I wear this necklace. Just like that.
Bet he does.
And my children are like, they could not.
What a beautiful,
even understand it.
What a beautiful story. And let me just look the camera in the eye and say, what an inspiration to many of us. Okay? And as I wear my Dudley Van Dyke,
here you go. Meet him at the door, Cokie. Anyway, in great stories, the stories, we had our visitation at the house. My grandfather, my uncle who was a priest, we knew exactly what to spin into gear when Mom died because, my sister lives in the same house that my grandparents lived in. And so we brought her body home, and we had a rosary, and we, had a visitation. And we thought we would be there from 5 to 7 or whatever, and at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
But it was the bus driver and the monks from the abbey, and it was the mayor, and it was my first babysitter named Betty Boot, who I hadn't seen in 40 years.
Your mom touched the lives of many people.
And she did. And there were so many stories that I had never, ever, ever heard. And I have a Down syndrome brother, and he was born 2 years before me, in 59 and 60. And she that was her cause. If you read about anything that she was interviewed in the paper, it was always about disabilities and she started the first kindergarten.
Croghan's does give back so much to the community for causes and disabilities, Special Olympics to be sure. Yes, did I get that right? Yeah.
So but lots of moms and dads and Down syndrome children who said that she went to the hospital and talked to them after, their child was born and said, look, you can do this. This is what we're going to do. One friend came through and she said, your mom came to my house at 8 o'clock in the morning, which I find hard to believe. But 8 o'clock, she wasn't a morning person, and knocked on my door and said, now look, you have had a perfect life. You've gotten to do everything you've wanted to do. You have a beautiful family, and now you have this little girl that needs you, and I've just appointed you to the disabilities board. You're going to have to drive to Columbia twice a month, but you're going to do it.
Awesome.
And he said, that's exactly the jolt I needed.
And he said, okay.
He said, okay.
Of course he did. How could you turn that down?
So, there are mercies and blessings everywhere you look, and sometimes you don't have to look for them at all. They just pop up and appear. So my children weren't allowed to hear my mom tell all the stories, but they got a sense of who she was, I think, in a much deep, I just kind of saw her like sprinkling this little grace down on us all the time, they know who she was for sure. There's no doubt about it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And, there's so many aspects and so many things that we could talk about. So after show, I'm going to have to get more from you. I just wanted to recap with a few things that were just, I think, so poignant to the listeners about the empire you have
contributed and growing. Yes, the Croghan's legacy, carries a big shoe that you had to jump in when you came back from Greenville in '09.
Well, it takes 4 of us to do what Mom did. That's what I can tell you.
Well, and you're probably doing 16 times the revenue, might I guess?
A little more revenue.
A little bit more?
A little more.
A little bit more than that. Okay. So, bad guess, but...
No. More, no, a little more revenue than she was doing, not more than 16
yes.
times. No.
And so, you've continued to grow and meet the demand, which is a beautiful thing.
Well, that's an interesting part, because the only reason Croghan's is still here is because of my sister, who really never thought she would be in the jewelry business and went to work for my mom, much like my mom went to work for my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Mom majored in journalism and wanted to be a writer. And he said, just come work for me one summer, Mary. And, that was all she wrote. And so she was there forever. And the same thing really happened with Mary. She majored in special ed and wanted to be a special needs teacher and did her practice teaching. And Mom said, just come work for me for the summer. And she never went back.
It's a gateway drug.
It's a gateway drug.
It's a good one.
It's a good one.
And it could be a very expensive one, too.
Exactly.
Which is a lovely thing.
Really, worked side by side with her for many, many years. But she is what kept everything together and brought, introduced computers and brought us into the, modern day. But do we need to go to break? Are we good?
No, we're good.
Okay,
yeah, we're gonna wrap up here in a minute. But like I said, I'm could sit here all day and chat with you all things this. And if this is an okay transition in closing, have you engaged or seen 411?
Yes.
You have?
Uh-huh.
That was a good answer. I didn't mean to unsolicit that question.
I'm not going to tell you it's been at 5:30 in the morning.
Well, little unknown secret is you don't have to do it at 5:30 in the morning, but those really seeking transformation do. But, a bit of confusion about 411 and doing the 4 things before 11 a.m. that make a perfect day, and the perfect day concept. I mean, you've illuminated so many things that I think is so important to say to people, which is perfect days are not about perfection, and raising and maintaining a legacy and an empire such as Croghan's is riddled with imperfection, yes, and mistakes, and I don't know.
Of course.
Yeah, and trials and tribulations and struggles. And I think that it's not only about that, but 411 and these concepts of perfect days are about all the values and all the things you've touched on today.
Well, I love what you say in that when I did come back, Croghan's had been here already 100 years, so it was doing fine, and I didn't want to show up in my family business without something new to offer. I didn't want to show up and say I'm ready to be part of the pie. I wanted to say, let's start a bakery. Let's have a bigger pie. Let's think of things that we haven't done.
And I love that soundbite, that you just didn't want to show up, that you didn't want a piece of the pie. You wanted to make the pie bigger.
Right.
And bigger in so many ways. Contribution, not just revenues.
No.
And I've seen you do that, and it's been a beautiful thing to watch.
Well, with my girls, this thing with Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of started, and that's really kind of what I brought to the table. I couldn't be in the store every day. I was driving carpools. I was making sure that nobody was smoking pot on my roof. I was just I had these teenage girls by myself. And so I really dug into how I realized Apple Store opened across the street from Croghan's. What a paradox is that?
Absolutely.
And I would see these lines up, and I was like, oh my God, if we're going to get the next generation, we got to be here.
Right.
So
you saw it and you got on board.
All of those times that people thought I was eating bonbons and sitting on my sofa feeling sorry for myself, I was really trying to figure out how to have a mobile business, which we've done. I mean, our website we work on constantly.
And shame on you, because it's not a mobile business. You have built a mobile brand.
Well,
You've built an online brand, and the transfer of brand, almost like transfer of values, I think that's a major problem when you look at when businesses take something with the legacy and the foundation that Croghan's has, and you try to throw it online or onto social media. It can be a complete fail, and I know that's been a huge success for you.
I've tried very hard to kind of demystify the process. Instagram is such a great tool because it's instantaneous, and we have 22,000 followers on Instagram.
Unbelievable.
And so you can throw things up throughout the day, and I really think it represents the values. We are constantly saying, we're taking this grandmother's pin and turning it into a bracelet, and we've divided the...
and giving people ideas for perfect days.
You give it ideas, but you also give it meaning, and if you I can't turn it over because I feel like I own it so much, and I know that my life would be easier if I was not the person doing it. But in terms of image and in terms of, people don't walk in a jewelry store every day. They don't think they need to be there, right?
Right.
I mean, you don't wake up one day and say, you don't. And so to tie the meaning of it to the thing and the experience. I mean, I feel like Croghan's is more of an experience than a destination at the end of the day.
Well, and an experience within the destination.
Because you've done it's a really crazy experience.
You've done amazing things with the property as well.
Wow.
And so, rounding back to the 411 concept, because I love, you've given me so much fodder to share, because it's this, talk about demystifying. People think that 411 is about, getting 4 things on your to-do list done and it makes a perfect day. It's like,
big picture.
No, and you've mentioned so many things that should be on that 411, whether it's gratitude.
It starts with gratitude,
children,
period.
Friends, faith, bridge walks. I heard the horizon. I heard the water. I heard favorite stories. I heard disabilities and telling your story. So I hope to have you back on the show. And we didn't even talk about your book. I know you've got a book inside of you, and I have to tell you, my favorite quote that I've gotten about my book, Perfect Day, was from someone who's very well read and very well written. And she said to me, Cokie, the world doesn't need any more Shakespeare. The book is fantastic. And I was like, that is the best comment I've ever gotten. And so as you endeavor in your book's successes and in that process, just put perfectionism aside and just get it written. Remember the fact that you wrote that 111-year thank you letter on your phone with the flu with no edits. Just remember that, because that's a perfect day. So, Rhett, thank you so much for being here.
Fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Like I said, every perfect day begins or ends at Croghan's.
Oh, thank you.
Boogie on over.
Thank
I'm
you.
loving showing off my Croghan's pieces today.
Fabulous.
Well,
and you've got Jessica coming later to tell you the whole story
I
behind
do.
that jewelry. It's going to be fabulous.
Dudley Van Dyke is up next.
Wonderful.
So, Rhett,
Great.
thank you as
You're
always.
welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, make it a perfect day.
I'll try.